Feedback. Okay. I think you can hear me. Okay. Sorry. There we go. Okay. So today you're wondering why it's called Idolatry and Intercession, possibly. I think if you were kind of going through it or studied it, you would see why. That's part of the topic I chose for today in my title. And the other one, obvious, is intercession. And also, we are going to see a little bit of this in the story of Purim, which we may talk about more next Shabbat. I know we'll be celebrating it, we'll be dressing up and having some fun with those of us who are able to be here for that next week. You'll enjoy it, and that's interesting. Even those of you who already were listening. Oh, by the way, you can tell I'm excited that the U.S. and Israel are finally doing what they're doing, because we know that things are a lot worse there than we're hearing, because they did a good job of cutting the internet so they could keep information from getting out. The only information that's coming out is those of us who follow other sources. In fact, at work, I don't work with them personally, but sometimes I meet other people, and the company I work at, and because of Canada itself allowing a lot of immigrants in, there's a few Iranians, I think I said that right, who work there. And the ones that I've talked to there, they, for the most part, are 100% behind Israel and U.S. attacking the regime and destroying it, male and female. So this isn't just something that's, just those who aren't there. It's the people there themselves who are celebrating on the streets. And even Trump said that this is your opportunity after Israel and U.S. finish, go in and replace the government that you have with the government that would be more for the people. So we'll see how God all works it out. We know in the end God's going to work it to his glory and his honor, because he, as we heard today, he is sovereign over everything. So let's get into it here. So I'm going to be, so there's a picture. The one I showed is of, it's supposed to be Moses there. There he's interceding. And when I found it, it actually does have, go to the next slide if you like, Eunice, thank you. So, right, he's interceding for his people. So first we need to look quickly, well, how do we get there? So our Parashah 70, which is today's Parashah, and Purim, how do these relate? All right, that's one question I hope to help us answer today. And so in the next one I'm going to put up there is what happens to Israel in today's Parashah versus what happens to Israel in the story of Purim. You can go ahead, Eunice. And you can put the last one up there as well. That way you guys can kind of see a little bit better what I'm talking about for this part. What similarities, back, you were good, thank you. What do we see that Israel commits in the golden calf incident in contrast to Mordecai? And so as you know, as we reread today, it's all about how Moses is up on the mountain. He's speaking with God himself. and all of a sudden, this idolatry takes place. And we know one of the first commandments that God said is you shall not craft any idol. And so what do they do first? They break the first one. But then, okay, well, how did they break the first commandment? Do you think one day they just decided, okay, today that's it, let's go break the commandment? Generally, that's not how things work, right? Usually how it works, at least in this case, it's over time. You slowly get this idea that, oh, this seems okay. And can you blame them? Moses is up on the mountain for 40 days, 40 nights. You know, most of us, if we have a good leader and our leader wasn't there, we'd eventually want to do the same thing, replace our leader with another leader, because we'd be like, where did the leader go? What happened to him? What happened to her? What are we supposed to do, right? How do we move on? When do we know when to move? So unfortunately, this is one of the first things that idolatry brings to a person and to people, is it causes us to put a person who is corruptible and mortal in the place of the creator of the universe who created Israel. So if you look at it that way, go, okay, yes, it's easy for us sometimes to jump on them. Well, I can't believe you just did that. What's wrong with you? Well, if I think about myself, better be careful, because if I were in that situation, it might be easy for me to do it too. So, where's our sheet on idolatry? There you go. Okay, I know you can't see it, but this side has idolatry. The middle gets intercession. That side is mercy. So you see how it didn't just happen in one night. There was this idea was like slowly somebody obviously began the question, where's Moses? What do we do? Where's the God that brought us out of Egypt? Which God do we put in his place? Because it seems like he's not here anymore. Moses is gone. Maybe God and Moses just left. We don't know. We just know Moses has been up there for 40 days and it's thundering and it's loud, but we're worried about him. So they build this golden calf because that's what they're used to. Egypt was full of, they would build different animals as a type of a god so that they could actually worship it as if, it was they needed to have this image, right? And that's another commandment of God, right? We're not supposed to put anything else, no other image in his place. Doesn't matter what it is, whether it's in heaven above, on the earth below, right? Even Romans talks about how, chapter 1 talks about how they would worship, creation would worship the other created things. They wouldn't worship God, the creator. So this is what they did. And so because of that, God sees what happens while Moses is up there. Says, Moses, hurry up, get down. Your people have acted against me. And I just spoke to them not too long ago. How could they do such a thing to me? No wonder he's so upset at first. It's like, that's it. I brought you out of Egypt. I gave you my words. How can you do this to me, right? Most of us, if we were honest with ourselves, that would be our first reaction. And so Moses comes down, and when he comes down, he sees what's happened. He throws the 10 Commandments. They get destroyed. He goes down there, makes them drink the god that they built, which means eventually what they drank came out. So their god ends up in the latrine, some god. And then he goes to Aaron and says to Aaron, how did you do this? Well, interesting, if you've read it recently, you would have seen that Aaron is the one who makes the golden calf. He says, bring everything to me. Now, there's some who are thinking, which, okay, fine. The possibility is he did it hoping that they wouldn't do it so quickly that he could maybe buy time, because Moses hasn't come down yet. So he's like, okay, bring me this. You won't do it that fast. You won't just tear stuff out of your ears and all that. No, they did. They brought it as fast as they could. Also, and then so he says, let's make a feast to the Lord. Well, makes sense. Seems like, as we continued on, God had these feasts that we're supposed to remember him. So, okay, well, I'll slow you down. Maybe I'll say, okay, let's have a feast, bring a feast to Adonai. They did it fast, but what were they there for, right? They were reveling, partying. They made themselves look embarrassing to the rest of the nations who would have heard about it. Sure, they didn't have internet like we do. Somebody wasn't there videotaping and sending it back to Egypt. Hey, look at what I'm seeing. They would have heard it eventually. So they would have, this idea came to, they would have been laughing at them like, you guys thought you were so great. Look at what you're doing, this God you serve, and you're dishonoring your own God. How can you do that? So anyways, he goes down, and when he gets asked, that is Aaron, why did you do this? Instead of him being honest with Moses, because he knows he's responsible, he tries to put it in a way to say, you know how stubborn these people are. And yes, Moses had an idea. Because of his guilt, he needed to push it off to somebody else. So nothing new there either. So Aaron makes up this excuse, and he says to Moses, please be kind to me. So funny, Aaron at this point seems to get a free pass, because you notice that nothing happens to Aaron. Nothing happens to his family. There's no kind of repercussion. But what happens in a few verses later is Moses says to those who will listen, those who honor God, come to me. The Levites immediately rush beside him. And Moses says to them, now, you go and kill all of your, as we read, your brothers, your neighbors, your friends. I'm sure that would have included females as well, not just males. But let's understand that males back at that time always represented the entire family. So just while we're going through this, kind of remember that. It's nothing, and that's just how it was back then. So they go, and 3,000 of them die that day. It's a lot. 3,000 of your friends, your neighbors, and all those people are dead because of your idolatry, and because of the idolatry that Aaron, who was put in charge, allowed. Now, it's possible that Hur might have been killed. We don't know, but the reason that's possible is because before that, Aaron and Hur were helping Moses. They were the other ones that were kind of leaders, seemed to be, especially when they were fighting. We heard about Hur when they were fighting. But Hur's not there, and you never hear about him again. So you go, okay, well, why is Hur not helping? No, it's there's rabbis do say, some of them, that it's possible that Hur said no. And because of that, the Israelites decided, we need to kill Hur. He's saying no to us. It's possible. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just telling you that that is out there if you read some of the studies on this, especially from the rabbis, okay? So, but according to our text, we just know that Aaron's in charge. So Aaron's at fault here. And so finally, so Moses starts to intercede again. Now, I'm going to go, as you see there, I'm going to go to Purim. Now, in Purim, those of you who have read it or read the book of Esther know a little bit about Purim. So in Esther, Haman, when King Ahasuerus, Haman goes to King Ahasuerus and says, essentially he wants to be worshipped. So he finds a way because he's been put in this position, and Mordecai refuses to bow down to him. And Haman does not like this at all. So he cunningly finds a way to go to King Ahasuerus and get King Ahasuerus to sign that there's this people called the Jews who are refusing to follow in his ways, the ways of the Persians. Oh, interesting today, that's present day Iran, okay? So, anyway, so King Ahasuerus doesn't really know all the details. All he knows is there's these people, and if I get $10,000, I will put it in the coffers or the treasury of King Ahasuerus. So King Ahasuerus is like, oh, okay, make some money, and yeah, I don't like this fact that these people are not honoring me. Sure, seems legit if you don't understand what's going on. Now, at the same time, he had just, before this, got rid of his first wife, Queen Vashti, because she refused to essentially prostitute herself in front of her husband and these other men. And the people in charge alongside him were like, don't let her get away with this. That's wrong, because if she can do it, you can be sure the other women will start treating their men the same way. Yeah. So this is when finally he brings in all these women, these beautiful women from that area. There's 127 provinces roughly, I believe he was over at the time. But he didn't know that, or I shouldn't say he knew that there was Jews, but he didn't know that one of them, named Esther, herself is a Jew. And King Ahasuerus ends up marrying Esther. Now, Esther had nothing to worry about. Haman hadn't come out with this edict yet, so she doesn't tell the king that she is a Jew at this point. So once Mordecai, so let's go back, let's jump ahead again. Mordecai finds out that King Ahasuerus signed this edict that all Jews should now be destroyed. And Mordecai, of course, he goes, what does he do, right? He tears his clothes, puts on sackcloth and ashes, and starts intercession. I want to see intercession. Intercession. What happened to intercession? Good job. Okay, thank you. So he starts in this way, he's interceding for his people. And he also suggests that maybe Esther was put at this place at this time to protect her and every Jew in the kingdom of King Ahasuerus, also King Cyrus. Okay, some of you know him as King Cyrus. So at first she, of course, doesn't want to, because she can't just, it's not like today, right? Your wife can just come up to you, don't have to worry. In her case, if she just shows up and he doesn't accept her by giving her the golden scepter, that's it. Her life could be over. King Ahasuerus is going to be looking for another wife, right? So she asks Mordecai and asks the other Jews to pray and fast for her for 3 days. And then she goes to see King Ahasuerus. And what does King Ahasuerus do? He shows the golden scepter out to her. She knows at that point she's accepted. So she bows to him and she sees she's accepted, so now she can go bring her request to him. Okay, so now let's go back before this back to the story of Moses and the golden calf. So here Moses is doing the same thing as who in the story of Purim? Somebody say it out loud. Yes, Mordecai, that's right, all right? Moses, like Mordecai, he's interceding. Now Moses didn't put on sackcloth and ash and, he didn't do that. But he was still interceding for his people. Okay, versus Aaron he was trying to deal with it from a human perspective, a natural world's perspective. If my friend just got killed, yeah, how much do I trust God that he can protect me? Because I am now the only one seemingly left in charge who's trying to do the right thing. So he does it his way. He doesn't get down and pray, be like, God, help me. Please, I can't do this on my own. So, versus Moses and Mordecai, they are interceding. So Moses goes back up, gets the commandments again, and we know how the rest, anyways, I'll just mention quickly that interesting, before Moses goes up, he asks a very interesting question. Now, he asks God if God would show himself to him. Now, the reason I'm wanting to bring this up a little bit is because it's interesting that in our story that we read in Judges 13, if you kind of put these together, you can go, oh, now I understand why in that culture, maybe in other cultures too, I don't know so much out west, but in that culture, they knew that they weren't allowed to see God and live. Because, as we just read, Moses asked to see God, but God says to Moses, no one can see me and live. So if I now jump ahead to the story where Samson is born, I can understand why, if I saw the one who I knew was the angel of Adonai, and the one who was God showed up physically, and I saw him, I might think I'm going to die too. And now we know his wife had enough sense to say we would not be alive still if he didn't accept our offering. But he did accept their offering. So she knew, don't worry, Manoah, we're okay. All right, he's not going to kill us. And So the rest of the chapters that we read today talk about the different, I won't talk about them, should talk about the different feasts we're supposed to keep quickly and all those different things that, again, we're reminded of, which is good. Now let's keep going you can go to the, the next slide there. Now, this supposed to be a picture of King David and Samuel chapter 22, which was read today. So yeah, you see I kind of already talked about that a little bit, the differences between Aaron versus Mordecai and Esther. And I talked about the similarities between Moses as well as Mordecai and Esther. So we see here that intercession is very important to God. But we're also going to hear a little bit more about kind of what that intercession means and still the one who chooses. So, that's the two. So it's interesting if you, 2 Samuel 22. Now, if you look at it, anyway, he talks about, it's interesting how, if you look at the stories in Israel, when they talk about their God, they always go back to what God has done, something he did. They never just speak out words of oh, God is omnipotent, he's omnipresent, which is true. They always use something that he did. So if you look at that in chapter 22 of 2 Samuel, he's talking, there's some clear references at least to the flood that God sent to destroy the whole earth and all the humans and all creatures that were still on the earth, that were not in the ark. It's also interesting that at the beginning of that, we see David mention salvation. Now, our actual text that was for today, I know I read more, was 10 to 51. So the reason I wanted to read that was the extra verses was because we need to understand before we have this idea that somehow David was earning, because he talks about how I am righteous because of what I did. So then you would go, okay, well, so then Jews are earning their salvation. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't believe that any of them, if you were honest with them enough, got to know them, would actually believe that they're, quote, earning their salvation. The issue that they have is this: because they're from Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and they're a Jew, and the word Jew comes from the word Judah, which means a praiser of Yah, right? So if you're a Jew, you're supposed to be one who praises God. Now, if I'm believing myself to already be a praiser of God, what do I need to be set free from? Okay, so my point is this: because they already believe that through their physical offspring, they have this tie to God through Abraham. Now, maybe some of you here are, if there were Jews here, not sure, but, some of you would understand this more than I do, but just a little bit I've studied is I can see why, now I'm trying to do these things because I am a Jew. I'm a praiser. I'm supposed to be a praiser of God already, so I'm keeping Shabbat because I'm already right. In my mind, I'm already right with God because of my physical lineage. Okay, not realizing that that's not what saved Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the first place, but just to help you have that idea, okay? So none of them would actually believe that they're earning their salvation. So David is talking about the fact that Elohim shows up, salvation shows up to him before he talks about how he is now able to do what God wants, what God sees as right, and that God will accept it. I don't believe for a second he ever had this idea that God would accept it outside of that. So, go on here. So I talked about that. And so now we can see that it was very common for, you see David there, he's praying to God. Now, even one of our passages today talked about how we would bow. Okay, now, if you looked at, it was very common for Jews to bow in front of their king. And I wrote some context here. You can see that 2 Samuel 14, verse 4, 18, verse 28, 1 Kings 1, verse 16. So now, all of a sudden then, is it obviously okay for Mordecai not to do it? Because in their culture, Mordecai, if he had done that, that would have been venerating the Persian king. Now, the Romans also had the same idea, who were controlling Israel for a long time, all right? That they believed that their god Caesar was God. So in Roman time, you worshipped their god or you worshipped another god. You still had to venerate Caesar, but the Jews did not have to venerate them because they actually allowed them to have freedom not to, because they were a pain in the backside. Really, they were. If you look at the history, something they didn't like, they would go to war against the Romans. And the Romans eventually realized, okay, if we give them what they want, they're more peaceful toward us. Plus, it was also a better situation for Rome because they would actually make money off the temple. So same thing here. Mordecai realizes what Haman is trying to do. That's why he doesn't bow. Right? Again, we're talking about some things here about Purim. So we immediately notice the similarities between Esther, Mordecai, and Moses. Moses, after he shows his righteous anger towards the Israelites, says that he will return up on the mountain to try and intercede on behalf of the people who committed such a grave sin. Notice how he intercedes for his people. He begins by stating that Elohim had made a promise to the forefathers of the Israelites, that it was Elohim who kept Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, regardless of their sins. He was the one who rescued them from the Egyptian taskmasters to bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey. The Egyptians would say then that he was not able to fulfill the promise he had made for them and killed them. This was caused his great name to be disrespected and his honor lost. He does this to keep Elohim from destroying all of them. He also does this so Elohim will go with them as he promised. And this is how Elohim shows to all of the surrounding nations that his people are the Israelites and no other. And so we also see that talked about in, if you look at David, right, he's the king. Israel was the one that was chosen. So David's interceding for his people that God had specifically said, you belong to me. But he's also interceding for himself too, because notice in it, he's talking about how he was spared from Saul and his other enemies. So God shows up, and David talks about how he shows up on the wings of the wind, and the darkness is like light to him. So everything is in the power of God, and he can choose to do what he wills. So eventually, Esther would reveal who she is. And once she does, then all of a sudden, Haman realizes that, that's it for him. And now he doesn't know what to do, because now she is able to write another letter that allows the Jews to protect themselves. Now, the question is, you ask, okay, one case with David, who's praying because God's for God's deliverance and thanking God for his deliverance. David, in many of those situations, could have killed those people, but in some of them he chooses not to. For example, Saul, he could have killed King Saul a lot earlier, but he allows God to intercede for him. Same with the story of Abigail, and remember that, how David wanted to go and kill Nabal. David is stopped by Abigail, and eventually God does it. So some cases we see God doing it, but in the story of Purim, we see that God allows the Jews to physically now kill those who want to kill them. Hey, no, God's still working behind the scenes. So with David, we see that God just literally, in one case, he sends something like a heart attack on Nabal. Another case, Samuel. So in another case, Saul is fighting a war. He gets killed by the enemy, and unfortunately, so does David's good friend Jonathan. All right, so God's allowed to use us and do things in his own way. We can't tell God how he's going to do things. So let's go to our next slide. Go ahead, Eunice, sorry. So there they are. That's supposed to be a picture of them at where they're interceding, whether that's specifically to do with intercession during the story of Purim, I'm not sure, but that's what it looked like back then. You would fall on your face and you would just mourn and just pray that God would intercede on your behalf. So now, where's mercy? Mercy. Good job. Okay. So this is the last one I'm going to talk about today. So mercy now, if you looked what my daughter Johanna read, and by the way, she just spent the past couple days practicing that. So she's all of a sudden getting really excited about being able to read. So it was really nice to have her be able to do that today. And she did very well. So we see here that even in the case with David, all right, and the golden calf incident, I'll just read what I wrote here. First, he talks about Elohim being the one who had already saved him from his enemies. This is David. He realized that there was nothing he could do of himself to bring himself salvation. Mordecai realized that there was nothing he could do to stop the king's decree of himself. Mordecai calls upon the character of Elohim of Israel through his fasting, praying, and wailing to bring them deliverance. David recalls in this chapter who the Elohim that saved him is, and how all things are under his power to bring glory to his name. Similar to the intercession of Moshe on behalf of Israel on the golden calf incident. Moshe reminds Elohim of who he is and the promises that he made to his people, that his name is glorified through his keeping his character to them. Because of who his Savior is, he can say what he says in verse 10 to 51. That David, he is the tower of salvation for his king, and showeth mercy to his anointed, unto David and to his seed forevermore. And as Elohim keeps his word to Moshe, as this is who Elohim is, he shows the same keeping of his character to David in this wonderful praise for his deliverance from his enemies. Just as Israel celebrates the praise of their deliverance from Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, through Elohim raising up Mordecai and Esther. As Esther says, for the Jews, there's light and gladness. And it's one of the verses that some of us have memorized. And it's a good one for us to remember, because especially for next week, because we're not going to be looking like that. We're going to be praising, rejoicing. So the final point I want to end on is mercy. Why is mercy so important to our understanding of how these four texts that I've spent time on relate to each other? And 9 to verses 14 to 16 says, which was already read, what shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with Elohim? Elohim forbid, for he says to Moses, I'll have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I'll have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him that wills, nor of him that runs, but of God that shows mercy. So mercy, as we know, is the compassion, is the idea that somebody shows compassion on another one regardless of what they've done. So when God saved David, when God brought Noah on the ark and his family and all the creatures, when he also showed Adam how to make a sacrifice, and also sacrifice one of his own creatures that he created, an animal, and didn't just wipe out Adam and Hava at that point and be like, okay, I'm starting over, right? He showed mercy to us. And and as chapter 9, so if we go back to the beginning of chapter 9, it talks about how Israel was given all of the promises. They were given all the ways we're supposed to live. You can actually go to the last slide there. Thank you, Eunice. So there's a picture of Mordecai and in the story of Purim there. So because Israel had been given all these things, so Israel was now trying to, like I was saying before, trying to earn something not based on faith, not based through believing that the Savior was the one that they needed to be able to be obedient to him. That's how they lost their sight. That's one reason why I believe Yeshua has to show up and says, I'm calling the Jews first. And then I'll go to the uttermost parts of the earth. You will bring my salvation to the rest of the world. Because they had lost their sight, and they were supposed to show us the proper way to live. And unfortunately, we know that a lot of them, for the most part, haven't. There's been a few that have, but generally, as we just looked in their story of the golden calf incident, that's not the case most of the time for them, right, even at this point. So, okay, so I do want to point out that those of you who have studied Romans chapter 9, that spent some time looking at verse 6. It mentions that all Israel, which are of Israel, are Israel. Does that seem like a problem to some of you? Do you have a problem if somebody said, if I'm from Canada and not all of Canadians are Canadian? Some people would say that, oh, look, he's being anti-Semitic. He's not. But what he's saying is, because we need to look at this the other way as well. Those of us who believe are now part of Israel. Okay? If you believe in him, you're part of him through salvation, because he chose them, as we studied today, we read today in our portions in the Torah section, how he chose them, right? And how that's why Moses intercedes in such a way that says, don't do this, otherwise the other nations are going to mock you, saying you can't keep your word. All right? So, and we know that there was other nations that Egypt had taken over that would have joined themselves as the mixed multitude to Israel. So they would have believed in him. Doesn't mean they all had salvation. Okay, we can't assume that. We don't assume that. But it means that what God was saying is, if you believe in me, you're part of Israel. So when you have salvation, you need to walk like they do. All right? Keep the Shabbat, keep the feasts as best as you can. And I know one of the issues that would come up with, well, we're not in the land. But it's interesting, if you look at Deuteronomy, he does say to Israel too, he says, when you're outside the land, do what you can, and God will consider that as righteous. There's no temple outside the land. There's not even a temple where they can, or a tabernacle where they can go honor God in Jerusalem today. So then you just, well, how can God say they're honoring me? Because he wants us to honor him the best we can now. So he's, in that sense, that's how he's showing his mercy even to us. Because, yes, he's not allowing them to rebuild the temple yet. He's right. We're not bringing the sacrifices like we will one day. But he's still considering what we're doing as righteous to him because we're doing the best we can, looking forward to the day when we will be able to. So, wherefore, because they sought it not by faith, Romans 9:32-33, but as it were the works of the law, for they stumbled at the stumbling stone. As it is written, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone and rock of offense, and whosoever believeth on him shall not be ashamed. So since it is clear that Romans 9 is talking about the mercy of Elohim, he shows his mercy by saving a remnant of Jews and Gentiles through faith. We see Elohim already showed his mercy through the intercession of Moshe on behalf of Israel, through the song of deliverance where David praises Elohim, who through his mercy saved him. And likewise we see that the mercy of Elohim was shown through the intercession of Mordecai and Esther in the story of Purim. This mercy of his is part of the character that makes up who Elohim is. From the beginning, Elohim made the heavens and the earth, and he is in control of every situation that is on this earth today. Though we may try to ascribe some power to Satan. And unfortunately, I remember, I wasn't able to say anything, but I tried to write something. When we were listening to, I think, Andrew, you were there listening as well, when Rabbi, Yosef, and somebody brought up the idea that, well, maybe God, maybe Satan was the one that caused the chaos and all of that to happen. To me, based on what we read in 2 Samuel 22, I don't agree with that. I'll just put that out there because to me, I don't see why God cannot allow chaos and void until he's going to have that purpose that he's done. It has nothing to do with somebody taking control over it. So, Satan himself can only do what the creator of all who are saved, who make up Israel, will allow Satan to do. This is why we see the undeniable mercy of our Elohim in the story of the golden calf, David's song of deliverance, and Romans 9, where all are saved are part of Israel, and the story of Purim. Therefore, by the mercy of Elohim, faith was shown instead of idolatry through intercession, resulting in our life of praise. So, what I have for today, I think he'll be back. We're good, Eunice.
Thank you, Brother Wesley. I'd like to welcome the brothers to return the Aron Kodesh. It's Haim Hi Lamakasim Kimba Veko Keka Meusha Dekar Keka Darke Noah Veko Keka Shalom Hashevenu Adonai Eyekat Venashuva Kadesh, Kadesh Yameinu, Kadesh Yameinu Kekadian. The Torah is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it, and all of its supporters are happy. Help us to turn to you, and we shall return our lives as in the days of old. When the ark rested, Moses would say, "Return, O Lord, to the myriad of Israel's families. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who have experienced your faithful love shout for joy. Hallelujah! For the sake of your servant David, do not delay the return of your Messiah. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my Torah." Any thoughts, prayer requests, or thoughts on the sermon? Praise reports? Brother Martin, of course, would you like to step forward?
Thanks, brother. Just a brief minute. Excuse me. I just want to offer a thought or two concerning the passage on the golden calf we read that often overlooked and misunderstood. Try to make this very brief. In chapter 32, in verse 1, you'll notice that it says that Moses is delayed, right? Earlier on when God spoke in thunder, the people were terrified and they said, hey, don't speak to us directly anymore. Please just, speak to Moses, then he can tell us what you said because you're freaking us out, okay? So Moses is designated as the mediator. He is a mediator between God and the Israelites. He hears from God and tells it to the Israelites. The Israelites tell Moses what they need from God. Moses offers the prayers to God. So he's the mediator between God and man. Okay. He's gone away 40 days. They don't know where he is. They no longer have a mediator to God. They have no way to communicate with God. And then as far as they're concerned, they have no way, God has no way to communicate with them. So they need a mediator. That's why they say, referred to Moses being delayed. So they need a mediator. They don't know what to do, so they want to make a mediator. They learned from the land of Egypt that sometimes God is represented by a physical object. They decide on a calf because the calf represents the pictorial Hebrew of the bull, which is strength, and the staff, which is, the shepherd. So they make a calf. The other thing, though, I just go on is in verse 5, it says in verse 5, Aaron says in verse 5, tomorrow is a feast to God. That word feast is hag, okay? The feast day that they're referring to is the day of Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, Pentecost. It is a feast dedicated to God. And in that verse, if you look carefully, the Hebrew doesn't say gods. It says Yahweh. The word is Yahweh. Tomorrow is a hag, a feast to Yahweh. And the verse before, Aaron says, he cites the first, in Exodus 20, we often call them 10 commandments, but they're not 10 commandments, they're 10 words, davar, not mitzvot, davar. And the first word is, I am the Lord thy God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the land of bondage. That's the first commandment. Aaron repeats it. He's saying, he just acknowledges that the God of Israel, the one that brought us out of the land of Egypt, out of slavery. So there's no question they haven't changed gods. They just need a mediator to be able to communicate with the same God that brought them out of Egypt, Yahweh. Okay, that's all.
Any other thoughts? Joachima?
said that we can't tell God what he's going to do. We can ask him requests, and he can choose to answer or not answer. If he answers, then to me it's considered like if he answers our requests, we just told him what to do, and he did it for us. Otherwise, if he didn't if he said no or wait, then we didn't tell him what to do.
Very good. So even though he doesn't answer, that's still an answer. It's not that God didn't give you your request. It means wait or no or wait longer. Sometimes the answer is no. What's brother Tim? What's your question? Not the question. All right. Okay. So may we request? Yes, Mary Lou.
In relation also to what Joachim have said, we can request and the Lord will say so. And even if it will take years, he will answer. So here, these are not the tablets of Moshe. it's our tablet at the back. It says here, I don't know if you notice, but it's praying for the peace of Jerusalem. That is Psalm 1226. And I guess we have to continually do so. The other one is, this was written by Eunice 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we were praying for those hostages. Bring them home. And they were brought home. So it's time to update for freedom of Iran, freedom of oneself, freedom. But then, again and again, the Lord answers prayers. Thank you, Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for coming. Thank you for honoring your time with the Lord today and spending the Shabbat with us.
Amen. All right. So at this time, we would like to give our Hebrew graduates time for them to receive their certificates. So Eunice, you could. We have an ongoing Hebrew class here in our congregation, and we have graduates today that have finished their beginners Hebrew reading course, and